Thanks for coming back to a very special Nonsense Password. This one, a second interview show by Nonsense Password, and I think it's a great interview. I think it's very, very listenable content-wise. We get into some interesting topics. We talk about the art life. We talk about technology. We talk about politics. We talk about a little bit of everything. Before I reveal the guest, I just want to mention on Twitter, you can reach me at NonsensePassPod. The official website is nonsensepassword.com. There is a Redbubble store. There's a Teespring store. There is a SoundCloud. And there's other stuff, too. If you want to email me, specialcharacter@nonsensepassword.com, please do, especially if I've reached out to you to do an interview. I really like doing these interview shows. I really like talking to people that I'm interested in. And I find my guest very interesting. He made a movie several years ago named Boppin' at the Glue Factory. Very small film, kind of went into obscurity. But those who have watched it tend to like it very much. And you can find it on Amazon Prime. The filmmaker in question is my second Nonsense Password guest, Jeff Orgill. I really enjoyed doing this interview. There was a problem with the audio that I fixed, but I think it's still I fixed the best I could. I think it's listenable, and I think the content is wonderful, and I really hope you enjoy it. So, without any further ado, here is Jeff Orgill. Hey, so Jeff, one of the first things I want to ask you, I'm such a big fan of your film, and but I don't know how to say your name.
How to say the name of the film?
No, how to say your name.
Oh, my name, Jeff Orgill, Orgill, Orgill.
Orgill, yeah. Orgill. Okay, I didn't know if it was a hard G or not. That could go like GIF, like GIF.
Some people say Orgill, and I don't even take the time to correct them. It's whatever,
Really?
I don't care. Yeah, it doesn't bother me either way. But Orgill is what I generally tell people, and that's my understanding of the pronunciation.
If I were you, I would tell different people different ways to say it so you could track things. In my real life, I go by my middle name and not my first name. And when people who know me by my middle name learn my first name is different than the name that I've given them, they act like I'm up to something.
All right, you keep them on their toes, right?
Absolutely. But I'm like, I lied to you that my name is my name. Because it's my name. Anyway, I'm such a big fan of your film. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
The film I found like so many others on, Total Overlord's movie service, which is the best movie service ever for finding great and interesting films. I found it one day on Amazon Prime. Boppin' at the Glue Factory. Tremendous film. I've watched it several times. One of the best. I really have. Probably like half a dozen. My wife.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's a great film. It's very complex. It's one of the best examinations of human nature that I've ever seen.
Wow.
It really is.
Well, thank you.
What was your motivation for making the film?
Oh my gosh, that's such a complicated question.
It's a very complicated film.
I just really wanted to make a film, man. I wanted to make a feature film has dominated my probably since I was a teenager through my 30s. Or well, even now I guess it's dominating my life still. Yeah. Something that haunts me. And I had this thing that I just wanted to make a feature film, and it went through all these permutations, and I wrote different scripts with a friend, and this script kind of came out of a personal experience with a friend who had my best friend who I used to be in music projects and bands with, and he kind of went off the rails and had a really bad drug problem for a while, and I think he's over that now. We're not as in touch anymore, but it really surprised me and threw me for a loop. and that created sort of this emotional impetus for this story about I guess trust and people that are taking care of you and not knowing where they stand, like where their real interests lie. And so that's kind of
Absolutely.
what the character was based on. And then I was living in San Francisco. I'd gone to film school at San Francisco State University, and I used to walk by this convalescent home, this old folks home, on the way to the grocery store, and it really fascinated me because it was like this little, like a aquarium. Like I'd stop by and I'd peek in the window like late at night. Maybe I'd be coming home from a bar, a little tipsy or whatever, and I'd just peek in and I'd see the night shift nurse or whatever at the desk, and it just seemed really kind of surreal and odd, like the color of the lighting and just the quietness of it, the solitude, and that inspired me too. And then one of my favorite films of all time has always been One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So I took a lot of inspiration from that sort of milieu and that kind of a institutional vibe. And a bunch of every other film I loved, I tried to roll it all into one complex burrito, and that's the the film that we are talking about, Boppin' at the Glue Factory.
It's absolutely amazing that the film is not like your personal experience because it's so layered, and I find it to be so true. There's so much going on. You have this main character who has his interests, and he's doing his thing, and it's just sort of like how he fits is how he fits in society. Sometimes it seems like he's being like absolutely benevolent, but he's always pursuing his own interests, and everybody else in the film is too, right? And
Yeah.
he goes to this convalescent home, which might as well be society, really. And he only understands that people have like these cravings and these needs, and he's always like offering water. Like, I got some water for you. There's plenty more where that came from. I absolutely love that. Everybody's just looking out for their own interests. Everybody's being absolutely selfish through the entire film, and it's just absolutely wonderful. It's one of the best films I've seen about just what it's like to be human, and it's like an honest look at it. It's kind of amazing that it was a lot more inspired by things external to you than like an actual personal experience. Because when I was watching the film, usually I go pretty deep in cinema, and usually when I watch an indie film like this, I can kind of tell where things come from. But Boppin' at the Glue Factory is so layered, I couldn't quite pinpoint it. So that was really interesting for me, how you just kind of detailed where that came from.
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to my other co-writers on it too. Hector Maldonado was my friend from high school who I was living with at the time. We came up with the first, I don't know, 5 or 6 drafts of the script over a few years, and we were submitting it to the Sundance Lab, trying to get into the Sundance Lab. And 2 times we got really close. Like they invited us to the next level or whatever. So it gave us a lot of momentum. Like this is worth developing. They like the story. There's something here. We never made it into the lab ultimately, but it kind of gave us this charge, to keep working on it. And then I got met another friend when I was working for Roger Corman's company down in LA, and really great, really talented filmmaker, great screenwriter, Brian O'Malley. And he brought a whole other dimension of just craft and comedy. And like originally it just wasn't as punchy humor wise, or in a lot of ways it just wasn't clicking yet. And when I got involved with Brian, we just really dove deep into it and just tore it up and rebuilt it and took it to the next level. And so there's a lot of Brian and Hector in there too. And Hector actually knew the guy that inspired the film too. He knew Robert, my friend, and so he had a personal investment in it in that sense too. So we kind of together created the characters and the world and everything, and then Brian and I fine-tuned it and brought it to life.
It's really funny too. I think it's a really funny film, and for anything, it's really important to me that a film be funny. Like, because I find truth funny, I find tragedy funny. I find pretty much everything funny when it's like exposed like that. And I think this is a really funny film. I very much appreciate that aspect of it. And, everybody that I've shown it to thinks it's funny too. As I told you a little bit ago, I've probably watched it half a dozen times. And I've shown it to several people. And everybody that I've shown it to has enjoyed it too.
That's
but I really,
great.
one of the things that I really like about it too is that, these people who are the helpers always seem to try, they're like going through these like sort of self-help things where they're trying to keep it together, and you have like these sayings going on in the film, like, one of the major one is, if you're going to be a beekeeper, don't kick over the hive. And
that's Dale Carnegie, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's this thing too. I don't know where you got this part, because I find it funny. I might just find it funny because I'm totally ignorant of where it comes from. But the ocean is vast, the ocean is calm.
That's
huh?
totally fabricated, yeah.
That's totally fabricated. Well, I like how it's fabricated because I think that pretty much says a lot of the soothing things. It's just like, just this centering aspect of these people with all this inner turmoil, where they're like, I need something to ground myself with. Well, I need to think about something. I need to think about the ocean. I need to think about something obvious, obvious in order to, recenter myself.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing now, the wellness thing. Everybody's talking about wellness, and they have all these apps where you can, your phone could say, hey, take a moment to meditate,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know so many people now who have meditation rooms, and it's weird, and they're all trying to get me to meditate. And I'm like, well, I do yoga. That's about as close as I can get.
You're already meditating, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yoga is like the only thing, because I'll just put like this beautiful woman on my TV, and she'll just be like, go like this, and I just like go like that. She'll go like this, and I'm like, whatever. And that's like as close to shutting my brain off as I can get. If it gets any closer, I start to freak out. Have you ever done one of those isolation tanks?
No, I haven't. I've heard about them though.
Have you ever seen Altered State?
I have. I don't think it's really like that though.
Yeah, I'm worried that'll happen. I have this friend who owns an isolation tank business, and I'm worried that if I go there, I'll destroy her business because it'll explode.
Oh, you should do it. You got to do it.
Yeah.
You definitely do that. Yeah, if I had that opportunity, I'd jump on it.
Really? It honestly scares the hell out of me. Do you do anything like that?
You mean like drugs?
No. Sure.
No, I think the closest to that for me would be reading, probably.
Would be reading?
Reading, yeah. I love to read. I read a lot. I probably read too much.
What do you read?
I'm going on a nonfiction thing for like the last 5 or 6 years. Let's see. I just finished one called Eye in the Sky, which is about, really general sense, it's about the police state.
Oh, yeah.
Like the government's ability to, it's kind of like a technological book because it's about this technology called the Gorgon Stare, which they developed in Afghanistan and Iraq War, where it's like a plane, like a Cessna or a drone that can circle around out of sight, but it takes this really high resolution video, and it can see everybody on the ground, like track cars and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And they used it to find like the people that were planting the bombs, the IEDs.
Yeah.
And also to find the networks of the terrorist cells and stuff. And so it was pretty fascinating, the way they developed the technology and how the government and the military like really poured it on thick with the funding because they were desperately trying to save lives. And now it's this thing that's being used in the police, law enforcement, and there's a lot of other uses too, like firefighting and stuff. And so it's really fascinating, kind of the tug of war between privacy rights and this thing that could really help people and help civilization immensely, but could also take away a lot of our freedoms and stuff because you can abuse it. And so yeah, I'm all over the map with my reading, and it all I'm trying to feed it into like some kind of a film or art project, but I just keep finding more books to read, and I'm more interested in reading and learning actually than creating anything right now, and hoping that lightning will strike and gel it all together, and I'll come up with some new idea or whatever,
Absolutely. I call that input mode.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm either in input mode or output mode. I'm usually on output mode. And then when I do things like when I'm on input mode, I like consume a lot. And I rarely ever read fiction books. I do read a lot of nonfiction books. Though I haven't read much since I've been making all these wave plays. But like you said about the privacy thing, pretty soon, when are they going to get the contract to go after Twitter trolls? When's the plane circling above because somebody, standing out at a rock concert just tweeted a joke about some CEO that doesn't like him.
Yeah.
And then they get tracked.
I have mixed feelings about it because so much of our quality of life right now, a lot of it is technology, medicine and, safety in traffic and flight and all these different things we have that extended our lives and made our lives, we can watch more movies and read more books and have more leisure time than ever in the past. But at the same time, this kind of technology, could save lives and make everything so much nicer in the cities and stuff. But like you said, it can be so easily abused. It just kind of keeps me awake at night thinking like, how do we resolve it? It seems like almost a turning point for humanity. Some of the technologies they're coming up with nowadays. The same thing applies with like genetics. They're doing all this stuff with fixing diseases and genetics and stuff. But then when does that cross the line into actually, engineering people to be a certain way, where you can choose your child's genetics and stuff. And that's not too far off, but I don't think anybody now knows the answer or how to resolve it. And it's just incredibly fascinating to see how the courts and the scientists and all these, popular sentiments come together to create like what's the next step for humanity. We're on the brink of all these huge changes, and it's so rapid. It's faster than anybody on the ground can really perceive. Here's a tip that I don't know where this would fit into this interview, but you there?
Yes.
I like to go to the library and I go into the new releases section,
and
I just pretty much grab everything that catches my eye.
Yeah.
And just check it all out.
That's a good plan. That's a really good plan. I do that myself.
If you go to new releases, you're kind of like getting all the current sort of where people's heads are at and what people have been working on for the last couple years. I got this one here, though, called Universal Life, an inside look behind the race to discover life beyond Earth. So I think it must be in vogue because you're talking about it, and I feel like I keep reading all these articles online about how SETI's being upgraded, or they're trying to get new funding for that, and they're going to change the strategy of how to search for extraterrestrial life and stuff.
I hadn't heard about that. Hey, did you run across that book in the past year where it was? I can't remember the name of it, but it was all about. It presupposed that every single U.S. president, back to George Washington, knew about alien life.
Is this a fiction or a nonfiction book?
It's listed as nonfiction.
No, I haven't heard of this book. What's this book called? It sounds outrageous.
I'll have to find it. I can't remember the name of it. That's what a lot of people don't realize about nonfiction is that it's not necessarily like a work of fiction is like a work of fiction. It's just totally made up. It might be drawn from something, but all that nonfiction has to be typically is that it has to try to be true. And also there's like all these anthologies and everything that are set. Like if you go into like the video section of your library, television shows, no matter how preposterous, all are listed with a nonfiction number because they're categorized.
Yeah.
I wish they wouldn't do that. But, and plays too, actually. Come to think of it, plays are listed as nonfiction. They're like in...
plays are listed as nonfiction?
Yeah. They end up with like an 800 number. They're like an 800 somewhere.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like a categorization thing, which is, on accident, I think, commentary about the nature of truth.
Truth's a category, man. It's a gray zone. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's true. It is. It's really.
We're limited by our desire to be like binary. We want to see things in black and white, and that's what the brain grabs onto, and it just isn't that way, you know.
That's very true. You know, there nothing ever has just two sides. Are you going to do a sci-fi thing now?
I love sci-fi. I don't know. I'm really fascinated with robotics right now and the way that AI and robotics is going, and I've been. I think it's interesting. It's been brought to the public attention by this. Is it Andrew Yang who's running for president?
Yeah.
And his whole platform is like a science fiction movie. It's like
it is.
We're gonna be replaced by robots, so we need universal basic income. And you know, I don't think he's going to get elected president, but I think it's cool that he's really going to bat for this sort of like warning. He's putting this warning out there, like, you guys got to think ahead.
Right.
In 10 or 15 years, a lot of stuff's going to change very quickly, you know?
Right. The robots really need to improve, actually. I watch a lot of videos every day about robots just constantly fucking up terribly. You know, there's this really, you know how they have those claws on trash trucks?
Yeah.
That reach out. There are so many videos about them just doing ridiculous things. Like that, there's one where it malfunctions in the middle of lifting it up to dump it, and then it just starts whipping it around and it launches trash all over this person's yard. And another one, it keeps trying to grab the can, and it messes it up, and then it accidentally turns it around. So then it has like the lid inside of its grasp, and then when it goes and it finally tries to dump it, it just throws the whole container away.
That's awesome.
It drives on. You know, that's kind of scary. That's really scary.
Those things are violent, man.
Yeah.
Those things are really powerful, yeah.
Did you hear the thing, too, about the sex robots strangling people?
No. That sounds really scary.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about? They have like these sex robots. They're all made. If you watch, what's her name? Whitney Cummings has a new special where it's on Netflix, where she had one of these sex robots made up to look just like her. That's what I'm talking about. And just before I saw this, there was this story that was everywhere, where these people have these sex robots that malfunction and like strangle them.
But did they actually? They haven't killed anybody, right? They just like started to they get away.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I think the motivation is the scariest part. So you mentioned Andrew Yang too. Have you ever watched that?
Oh yeah. No, Black Mirror. Yeah, Black Mirror is great.
Oh yeah, I love Black Mirror. I always tell people not to watch the first episode first.
Oh, the pig.
Yeah. It's a really ballsy way to start a series, but they get the wrong idea, I think.
I wasn't that disturbed by that. I mean, the idea was disturbing, but
I totally wasn't either, but people do.
Yeah, it seems like they kind of it really split the audience, because some people like Sarah was really put off by it, and I was like, yeah, I've heard more disturbing stuff than that, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought it was. I honestly thought it was kind of funny, but
Yeah.
But anyway, there's an episode in Black Mirror where it's sort of like how, you know, when you take an Uber, it's like, you give me 5 stars, I'll give you 5 stars. They're doing that, but it's like an all social interaction.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Part of Andrew Yang's universal basic income proposal is one of the worst ideas I've ever seen in my life. You know why? It is that show where they have like a social currency for social points, where you get like, you know, you get $1,000 a month for the universal basic income, but you would get more money for, you know, stuff like that, and for doing stuff like coaching a little league team.
Oh right, that's in his book. I think I read that he puts that in his book. He gets into that, and that's where he lost me. I was like, what do you? You're complicating this really simple idea, dude. You know.
I'm like, man, that is like the single worst idea ever. Because who's making up these jobs? You know, it's like, you get more money if you rat out immigrants. You make more money if you do whatever. I'm like, man, that's absolutely the most terrible idea ever. And that's when I stopped looking at Yang as like a serious candidate instead of just like a wild card idea man, which I appreciate him for. And he said this thing too that was really hilarious. It was after the first debate that he was in, and he only got like, I don't know, 90 seconds of talk time on this debate, because I think they're unfairly ignored. And he tweeted right after that. He goes, "Hey, running for president really lets you know that we are living in a simulation."
What? That's bizarre.
Yeah, Yang tweeted that.
Huh.
Cool points.
Weird. You think they're going to impeach Trump?
You know what? I've been saying this forever, that the culture of corruption protects itself. So is he way, 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 way beyond needing to be impeached? Yes. Will it happen? I'm still very skeptical. Because, so I've had many examples of this, just like in sort of like a real life scenario. And I guess it's kind of like a Boppin at the glue factory kind of thing, where it's like,
it always comes back to Boppin, doesn't it?
It does. No, it's really a great film because it really does talk a lot about human nature and human society. But there's typically this idea that politicians are stupid, right? But they're not. They're evil, right? They're typically evil, right? And so what they're doing is, a lot of this is theater, from my perspective. The Republicans versus the Democrats doesn't really exist. It's like the WWE. They all talk a big game. They all do show fights, but at the end of the day, they all work for Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
And so, if this impeachment thing were to actually happen, right, they run a giant risk of calling the cops on each other, right? And that's going to bring the whole syndicate down. And they don't want to impeach Trump.
That's a good point. The question is, though, if they don't do it, has he stretched the fabric of what we think America is or should be past a breaking point? Like, is it going to so undermine, like, it seems like so many people that I talk to are just so disturbed by it, that, or is it just going to be like, oh, wait, that's the fucked up world we live in, and we already knew that, and it's just so jaded and cynical that I almost feel like the impeachment is just to give everybody like a treat, like a candy, like, hey, it still kind of works, right?
Yeah.
The bullshit is still going, right?
Yeah, it's like, oh, here you go. We don't want to disintegrate your delusions that much. We want you to still believe.
It's depressing.
It is depressing. Let's not talk about this anymore. I think we're getting too sad.
Yeah, well, I'm a kind of a melancholy guy, and I think that's a big part of Boppin at the Glue Factory. Actually, was the melancholy, getting that. And I've still got So, how did you actually find the film on Amazon? Just random searching, or was it recommended, or?
Yeah, man, I go deep. I'm a really weird guy. Like, I don't know if it was recommended. That's how I find so many things. Have you ever seen Snow on the Bluffs?
No.
That is an excellent, the best found footage movie I've ever seen. And I found that on Amazon Prime. And I found Four Lions on Amazon Prime. Have you ever seen that?
What's it called?
Four Lions.
Four Lions. Never heard of it.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It is the ballsiest movie I've ever seen. And actually, it kind of has an interesting sort of spirit that is common to Boppin at the Glue Factory.
Really?
Yeah, it's so here. I'll give you a rundown of the plot real quick, right? It follows these four guys, these four lions, who are jihadists in England, right? And it just follows them as they're planning like a terrorist plot. and being terrorists. But it's so real because these people are so flawed and so fucking just terrible at everything. And there's this whole like relationship dynamic going on that is one of the greatest films I think I've ever seen in my life.
I want to check that out. Sounds good.
I found that.
I may have heard of that. I wonder if I've heard of that before. Is it a pretty obscure film or?
It's fairly obscure, I think, because of the content. Though Benedict Cumberbatch is in it.
Huh.
Oddly enough, he's not in that whole lot, but he's in it. To warn you too, I watch a lot of intense films, and then people seek me out for that. I had these people in my house, and put on one of your movies, and I'm like, oh man, I'm so into this one right now, right? So like, I put Four Lions on because I bought a DVD copy, and then I was playing it, and then about 10, 15 minutes in it, they're all traumatized and crying.
I've had that experience. I want to see Four Lions. That sounds really cool. I feel like I've heard of this plot line you're describing. It sounds like something that would have. I just haven't been able to follow up on movies. I actually saw the movies that the guy that you interviewed last time, Cody.
Oh yeah, Cody Clark. Yeah.
I would have watched. I watched Mute Date, and then I started to watch Ramekin. Is that how you say it? Ramekin last night.
Do you know what a ramekin is?
Yeah, it's like the little dish you put in like macaroni and cheese or whatever.
Had you heard of that before the movie?
I had, because I have some of those.
Okay. Because you're like a hip LA guy, right?
I don't know if I'm hip, but I'm in LA.
I just assumed everybody down there knew what ramekins were. Yeah. Because like it seems to be coming out of like obscurity. Anyway, I'm sorry. What? I'm really interested in like ramekins and where they fit in the culture right now. So I'm sorry.
You should be, man. Those particular types, so I don't have that type. I have a different kind, a different shape. They're square. So they may not actually be a ramekin, but it's the same kind of idea. And so my wife's kind of into the cooking and the chefy type stuff. So I might have gotten it from her,
Do you know what we call them?
That might be right. Little bowls? I don't know. What?
No, but actually, now that you mention it, I'm surprised that that's not what we call them. We call them sauce dishes.
There you go. Yeah. It's a sauce dish.
It worked. Anyways, yeah, so you found Mute Date. What did you think of Mute Date?
I thought it was great. I thought it was awesome.
I think it's a really good prediction of what 2020 is going to be like.
2020?
Yeah, the year 2020.
Why 2020?
Because it's set in 2020.
I don't think we're not going to be able to read each other's minds in 2020, though. Do you think?
Probably. I mean, we're pretty close to it now, I think.
I think it'll take a combination of AI and fused with social media and a lot more openness on Facebook and everything. Like right now, everybody's sort of guarded and paranoid about crossing the threshold of the idea of privacy and everything. But the next, maybe you're right. Maybe that's the next layer of civilization is where people get past all that and they're like, okay, let's share it. I mean, if you look at like a lot of the shows now, people are talking about a lot more stuff that you wouldn't talk about before, with sex and relationships and stuff like that. It's a lot more open. So maybe there's a truth to what you're saying, and not in a literal mind reading way, but just people being in each other's stuff a lot more,
So you were talking about just a second ago how you were saying that, there's a lot more like intense media out there. And what I've noticed is that a lot of these big corporations are doing these commercials that can only be inspired by meme culture and LSD.
Like what? What commercials?
You ever see like the KFC China stuff?
No. KFC China?
You should check out the marketing campaigns from KFC in China.
That sounds wild.
They are amazing. I would just watch them just simply, for pleasure. Not because I'm interested in like perhaps buying a brand of fried chicken. I'm just like I'm just like looking around.
The KFC around the corner just got a redo by us. It's all nice and shiny and freshly painted.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it looks great. I never go there, but I drive by it all the time. And I wonder about it, you know. I haven't gone to KFC since I was a kid. Trying to stay away from the fast food, you know. Uh-oh. Somebody's trying to call.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't talk right now. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that.
That's very cool. Hey, again, thank you so much for doing this. Hey, so, you know, you made Boppin at the Glue Factory. It was a beautiful film. And when did you make it, like 10 years ago?
We shot it in 2005.
Oh, you
and
did?
we released it. I edited forever. I edited so many versions of that film. I have a theory that I made the film. Part of the reason I made the film is so I would have something to play with in the editing room for the rest of my life. And that's kind of what I did for a long time, is I kept re-editing it. And there's other versions. There's versions of it that are really psychedelic and yeah, I went through like an After Effects phase where I was doing a lot of like layering and compositing, and so I have these scenes that are these hallucination type scenes that I kind of miss. I'm fond of, but the producers were like, because we'd get together and we'd have these screenings for notes, and they would give me these notes like, okay, there's these things, we think you could just tweak these and then we'll be done and we can go on the festival circuit. And I'd go off the rails. I'd go and start editing. I'd be like, but what about this? And it would be like a whole other tangent. And they'd be like, but wait a second, we just wanted you to do this, this, and this, and this, but now you're showing us a whole different movie. And it would freak them out. And so after a number of times of doing that, I think they were just, you know, like, anyway, so yeah, that was a 4-year process. So then in 2009, I finally got to a point. I went to this thing called the IFP. What is it called? IFP Filmmakers Lab or something. They invited me to that in New York. Yeah. Independent feature project. Really cool. A really cool lab. And Ted Hope was there, and Scott McCauley, and who else? Michael Dana was like the composer for some films I really liked. But they basically reviewed your film. There was me and like 9 other filmmakers, and all these other sort of seasoned filmmakers would look at your stuff and say, this is what, you know, we think you could do or should do, or where are you at with this? What are you trying to do? And you'd kind of powwow with them for a week. And then I came out of that. I was like, I decided on the way out there, whatever they say, I've got to stop this process. I've got to end it. So these are people I look up to. I trust them. They've worked on films that I admire. And unless they say something really stupid, if it's sensible, I'm going to take their advice. And they basically were like, your film is done. You just need to go score it and go through finish your post-production, get it mixed, you know? And I was surprised. I was like, oh, great. Okay. So then I took that, and that became my edit. I went with you kind of got to put a bullet in its head at some point and say, you're done, you know? And so then we went out and did the festivals and all that, and it was what it was. But that was in 2009 is when it actually got officially released and hit the festival circuit. So long answer to your question.
I really like the cut on Amazon Prime. I like the music too. I really like the music. I like the little Dilaudid tune. It's great.
That is a clue. That is a clue to the film that I really wanted to make in that Dilaudid thing. Yeah.
I can sense that now that you just told me what you told me.
I had that little stop motion animation thing.
Yeah, and that you're doing the whole like psychedelic thing, like you had a lot more psychedelic stuff.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to make something more like I wanted something that felt really handcrafted, more experimental and textural, and that was a big inspiration for that was Eraserhead.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I kind of wanted to make my Eraserhead, same script and everything, but not really practical, not really realistic. And I think the people I was working with, because it was a bunch of people and a long process to make the film. And once you get in bed with all these other people, you've got all these other agendas, and money issues and just a bunch of stuff gets mixed in, actors, all that kind of stuff. And I think that was really eye-opening about the filmmaking process. But I still have a fondness for Eraserhead and fantasize about going back out to the studio someday and making something that's just a hands-on experimental free-for-all, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you should just do it on your own because it's so easy to do anymore.
Exactly, yeah. That was happening at that time. That was a transitional time in cinema. Like cameras, you know, it was the transition from film to digital was kind of just happening then. We shot that film on one of the first high resolution HD cameras that was, what was it, a Sony Sony F900, I think, which I got from where I worked. I used to work at Playboy Television, so we borrowed it from them. And yeah, that was kind of that transition from film to digital. And also the stuff with social media and releasing films on YouTube and Vimeo and all that kind of stuff was just sort of starting to happen. So it was a really tough time for me because I wasn't sure, like the ground that I came out of, like Do the Right Thing and Jim Jarmusch and David Finch and this kind of indie film vibe that was, you know, 16 millimeter, Super 16, 35 millimeter film vibe. And the whole idea of shooting stuff on video and releasing it on the internet and social media thing was just like a new thing that was transitioning and self-releasing your film, all that. There was so much happening. It was a really confusing time to be posting a film, you know?
You know, now so much easier to reach your vision, but it's a lot harder to make money.
Exactly. And so those conflicts of like, am I doing this to make money, to start a career so I can do more of it easier the way I want to do it? But is that really what happens? Not necessarily. And the flip side of like, just do what you love and stick to your passion and find your vision and don't worry about the market, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just overthinking it. And it all spun out of control and took a lot longer to finish the film than it should have, you know?
Yeah. And then, you know, it's all about momentum too. And I really do hope you're happy with the cut that's on Amazon Prime because I think that's legit literature.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I am happy with it, and I committed. I just, you know, as an editor, you know, there's 1,000 ways you can do something, and you're like,
sure.
It's like I can go back and do this and that, and so maybe I'm more of an editor and less of an artist because I'm thinking about perfecting something or changing.
I think it's the same thing. I think an editor and an artist are the same thing, you know, because it's all about arrangement. Have you ever seen the film Wonder Boys?
No.
That is such a great movie. Michael Douglas is in it. Tobey Maguire's in it. And one of the lessons that the film tries to get across is that in order to be an artist, you have to make choices. You know, that's what it is.
Yeah, choices. Maybe that's the blessing of the catch-all phrase of experimental art is that you can set out to do an experiment and it can fail or succeed, and then you can walk away and find the next experiment.
Right.
But then the word art brings this other level to it of refinement, the editorial process, which can be its own rabbit hole. And then you're taking something that was this innocent sort of like create it and let it go, like an experiment. And now you want to grab it back and sort of start turning it into something. And what are you turning it into? Is it for an audience? Which audience? Are you supposed to make money at it? How do you monetize it? How do you market it? Does any of that, you know, and all that stuff becomes either part of the art itself or becomes its own monster, you know, the marketing and the presentation of it, getting it out there. And so there's a part of me that just likes to play, likes to be by myself and create. And then there's another part of me that likes to promote and market. And I have to reconcile those two because the one takes over the other sometimes, you know?
Yeah. You're so lucky that you like to promote and market because I don't, and I'm awful at it. I love creating things. I mean, you know, and whether or not I fail is generally, you know, depends on how much it amuses me, you know. So when you were on the festival circuit, I mean, how was that?
It was, I guess it was the small scale version of the dream because the dream would have been to go to like, you know, Toronto and Sundance and, you know, these big highbrow festivals, but that didn't happen. But I did get to go to other festivals in France and Monaco and some other parts of the U.S. and stuff. And I remember like when I got into, I think Monaco, I was working for my cousin, and I had just been laid off from working at Playboy, which ended up being a temporary layoff. But I was working for him doing like some promo videos or whatever. And I told him I got into Monaco. And it was the first festival, I think, that we got accepted to. And he said, well, you're going to go, right? And it hadn't occurred to me. Like, to me, it just seemed like something to spend money on, like to fly out there. But the way he said it, it kind of hit me. And he was like, his tone was like, you're kind of like making a big mistake if you don't go. And the gravity of it, I was like, well, I guess I got to go. And I went, and then I went to every festival that I could after that. And it's just, you create this thing, and you got to hang in there and go with it. And it may be an albatross around your neck, but it was fun. It was a lot of parties, a lot of meeting filmmakers, a lot of seeing films, that kind of stuff,
Yeah, because, once you go there, it's all about networking and everything.
Yeah, and I used to be so into that stuff, and I think I'm just burned out on that. Like, there's just too much stuff to keep up with.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you can't watch every other filmmaker you meet. You can't watch their film. Like, some people can. I have friends that, my friend Roger, one of the producers on the film, is just such a film sponge. Like, he is the most knowledgeable guy about cinema in the universe, and no joke, it's incredible. And he can keep up like that. And it was great to have him on the team because I could offload that responsibility to him.
That's awesome.
And he could be the guy that knows all about cinema. And I could tap him. I could be like, I need some names, some actors for this role. Give me some let's improvise. Let's come up with some spitball, And he would just be able to rattle off ideas and get my brain going, films to watch, inspiration. Like, he's just like this encyclopedia of cinema, and I'm not that guy. I don't know where my brain's at, but it's not there. And so to go all these festivals and meet all these people, and another thing too is you throw alcohol into that, and that severely handicaps. I mention that because I stopped drinking about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and it's really created this wonderful space that I think was lacking for a long time. And alcohol is just this thing that it kind of softens the edges, and when you're at a festival party and everything, you can forget things, and it all kind of blurs together, So there's my speech about alcohol, but I think that was a big part of that year. Definitely a lot of drinking, a lot of partying.
I absolutely hear you about that too. I've been really sober myself. I totally hear you.
Yeah, it's a game changer, and that's one of those things about conspiracy theories and all that is I think that the thing with alcohol in our culture is kind of a conspiracy against the individual. It's like so heavily advertised and just woven into the fabric, and I don't even know if kids have a choice from high school on. It's just such the social pressure.
I think about that a lot too. You know what I've been thinking about a lot? Are lowriders. If I'm in a high-speed chase, the last car I want to be in is a lowrider. If I hit a bump, I'm in a terrible situation, They're just talking people into handicapping themselves. And the same thing with sagging, It's like, should I handcuff my ankles together so if I need to run from the cops, I have to take short little steps? It makes no sense,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a lot of that going on. I think you're totally onto something there. It's interesting that you brought that up because I've been thinking about that a lot. Not specifically with alcohol, though. I do totally see that.
Well, the festival circuit's heavily alcoholic because all the festivals, they have these parties, and there's always free booze at the parties. And a lot of the festivals are sponsored by alcohol, spirits makers, Johnny Walker and all that kind of stuff. And it's just such a part of the world, and I don't really relate to it anymore. And I've even had trouble, like recently I've smelt people with alcohol in their breath, and it really strikes me as an odd smell now, whereas before, I never would notice it.
Yeah. You should be like, shouldn't you be vaping marijuana?
Yeah, everybody vapes, and I think they're vaping marijuana in the schools now, in high school and stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, I know if
Yeah.
I was in high school right now, I would be. I have a couple of more questions I want to ask you.
Yeah.
One is, what's like your favorite film?
Favorite film? I don't know if I have a favorite film. I guess it's easy to go back to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Right. And not just like one film, just kind of like an idea, just kind of like
I like that. I liked Eraserhead. I like what else? I liked. I don't really remember liking The Piano. Remember Jane Campion film The Piano?
Yes, where Harvey Keitel is butt naked in that.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Do you remember him on Oprah?
I didn't see him on Oprah. What did he do? Get
right
butt naked?
Right around that time, because it was funny. I was a little kid when that movie came, and I saw it not knowing, and my parents showed it to me thinking that it was a different movie, right? And then later, I saw they were doing a thing for the movie on Oprah. Harvey Keitel was on Oprah. Oprah straight up says to Harvey Keitel that she saw his dick. I'm not a big fan of Sam Neill. There's something about him that bugs me.
Oh, he's meant to be that way. Oh, you know who I like a lot is Cronenberg. Like I liked.
Oh yeah.
Oh, my favorite one of my Dead Ringers, which is.
Oh yeah.
When you said Sam Neill, I thought of the other guy, Jeremy Irons, but they both have that kind of.
They do.
Like a properness to them or a stiffness,
They do.
And it works for certain characters, It's an asset for Sam Neill in The Piano. I think it was an asset to his character, that stiffness.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But what else? Jane Campion's not really her first film, but I think maybe her second feature. It's called Sweetie. Sweetie, have you heard of that film?
Oh yeah. I've seen it. I'm trying to place it.
I really love that film, and I wish that I could. That just had a big influence on me when I was learning about cinema, filmmaking stuff. Do the Right Thing is a favorite.
I love Do the Right Thing. I think that's one of the best movies.
Yeah, that was the movie that when I saw that and I walked out of the theater, my body felt like it was quivering, like electric, like I was electrified, and I thought to myself. Like before that, I wanted to be a film composer, like write music for films.
Oh yeah.
And I was really into bands and rock and roll and that kind of stuff. And at that moment, coming out of that film, I thought, oh, people make films, not corporations. Because I grew up thinking of like Star Wars and Alien and stuff like that I loved as a kid was a corporate thing, like a big company made this film. And I didn't really feel the presence of an individual voice, And with Do the Right Thing, I really felt Spike Lee, like I could feel his sort of pain and his anger, And that reminded me a lot of being in a band. Like, because in a band as a songwriter, you're putting your voice and you're writing these songs, you're putting yourself out there directly emotionally. And I didn't see that in film until I saw Do the Right Thing. Then I really felt, okay, this is a personal medium after all. And that's the film that helped me realize that I wanted to direct a movie.
That is awesome. I've always been such a big fan of Do the Right Thing. And that's really cool that is, sort of like your awakening.
Yeah.
In a way.
And I loved movies before that, but like I said, I saw them as something that was made by a big group of people, and they are made by a team and everything. But I think Do the Right Thing was the first movie that really made me, it clicked where I was like, oh, this is one person, and this is their frustration and pain and suffering about the subject, and they've put it into this film, and I feel it, and it's really making me shake right now, and it's great.
Oh yeah. Film is very spiritual. It's like the most spiritual medium, because and if you have something who's like putting their spirit out there, it works best if it's like a singular person, especially if they're trying to make a singular film, like a Ramekin or a Boppin at the Glue Factory or something like that. You can really connect to it.
Yeah, and that's it's the spiritual components which you mentioned. And actually, you just said something about the uniqueness of a film that sparked my memory about your interview with Cody about genre and how hard it is to work within genre or be unique and stuff like that. And I think that's part of maybe something we both are vibing on with these films. Some of the films you mentioned, like with Cody's film Mute Date, is it does feel very singular. It's a one of a kind film because, and it also feels very tangible. Like, oh, I could see how they made this. Like, this feels accessible and it lets you in. It disarms you, but then he dumps all these ideas on you, and he's like got your attention and your time, and you almost have this conversation. In some ways, I think maybe that's kind of what Woody Allen was good at, is the simplicity of it. It's people talking. It's not. There's no chase scenes. There's no convoluted plot. There's no genre trappings. There's no special effects, and that's something that is really sexy about a great film. Is it? And I see that in music too. Like some of my favorite bands are like I like the Pixies a lot.
Oh yeah, I love the Pixies.
But what they do, it just seems kind of simple. It's like they're not playing virtuoso parts, but
Right.
they're well put together. They choose the right notes at the right time, and they have deceptively their music is complex, but it's deceptively so. It's like it sneaks it in, and it's a bunch of simple parts put together to create complexity.
Absolutely. And what's really great about the Pixies is the Pixies aren't trying to be anybody else. Everybody's trying to be the Pixies. The Pixies are just the Pixies.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really works for Boppin' at the Glue Factory, and Ramekin, and pretty much every film that's worth watching has a component of singularity. Just before I talked to you here, I was looking at a review for The Joker, right? Which I'm interested in seeing. I'm sort of like neutral, like it could be good, it could be bad. Actually, all the accolades that it's getting is making me suspicious. But I was reading this review of it, and somebody was complaining about it and said that it doesn't even work inside the confines of its own genre. And when I read that, I was like,
that sounds like a good thing to me.
Yeah, I was like, this reviewer is an asshole.
So it's kind of like it broke the genre, which is kind of cool. If you
yeah, it's its own film. That's what's important to me. And and if you listen to Cody's interview, we talk a lot about that, where it's like, you have all this industry stuff, and that's really what genre is about. And honestly, and we were in agreement with it that, the most important thing for a work of art to be is to be singular. So that's what makes it relevant. And honestly, thinking about it, I don't know what genre Boppin' at the Glue Factory. Do you have any ideas? It's your movie.
Oh man!
See, you can't answer that because it's a great movie.
I think Amazon put it as a drama and a horror, or no, comedy and horror, which is really baffling because there's no horror in it whatsoever.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a mistake. I think it's misleading. But I did think there was something. There's an element to me of horror in the idea of working at an old folks' home, and I remember when my grandmother was in an old folks' home, and we went to visit her, and it was very disturbing because when you're a kid and you're around that many sick and disabled people, that's the whole place, and there's this vibe there that's like death,
Yeah.
What about the conspiracy that we never landed on the moon? What do you think about that?
What do you think about that?
My grandfather used to tease me about that, and I never knew if he believed we did or didn't. But he used to ask me to prove it.
Yeah.
And my dad was involved with something to do with like missile guidance systems and radar and stuff, and he worked at General Dynamics in the 60s, and so he was kind of a lot more involved in the whole technology that was going on at the time. So to my dad, it was like laughably silly that my grandfather would always ask me about this. And So I kind of took my dad's side, and I was like, oh yeah, of course we've landed on the moon and everything. But recently, a friend of a friend has been posting a lot of stuff online, and she calls herself a truther, and she kind of lumps in this non-lunar landing thing with a bunch of other stuff too. Like all these things get bundled together,
That's
and
terrible when that happens.
she's kind of picking and saying, well, I agree with some and disagree with others, but we all need to respect the truthers. Which I guess if you believe any of one of these things, then you're a truther and you need that respect or whatever. And it just seemed like a weird kind of logic. It's like I don't understand why is that a truther? You're not a truther. You know what I mean?
Well, it seems like you know how we were talking earlier about alcohol and lowriders and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that might be what's going on there. There's like this like sort of like misinformation play, and also some people have like this crisis of the spirit when they realize that there's something they believe in is bullshit, so they go hard the other way, right? But I think there's also this marketing thing where it's like, well, Building 7 was weird, but if you agree with that, then you also have to agree that the moon landing was fake.
Yeah, or respect the people that believe that and do all the research to back up their idea that was fake. And I don't understand that. Why do you need to respect? What does respect have to do with anything in the world of science and fact?
Right.
Well, fuck respect,
Science works when there's no respect. That's when it works the best. You're all killing each other. You're all going at each other. The best argument with the best evidence wins. That's what it's all about. The entire point of scientific methodology is to eliminate human bias, right? Which, is, to forego human feelings. So it's all like, you're all in this fight, and then, the best idea is Christ. That's the entire idea. Do you think Stanley Kubrick had something to do with the fake?
I think he was inspired by it. I think that he was all that stuff was happening concurrently.
Have you seen you've seen The Shining, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, beautiful, beautiful film.
Have
you seen Room 237?
Say it again.
Room 237.
I haven't seen it, but I remember when it was on the festival circuit. Have you seen it?
Yes. Do you know what it's about?
Isn't it like 5 conspiracy theories about
The Shining?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's 5, but it's a certain number. It's either 5 or more. There's at least 5.
Yeah, 5 different threads about it or something. Yeah.
So I've watched this movie a few times. This Room 237, and I love The Shining beforehand, but now it like makes it 10 times funnier after I've seen Room 237.
I gotta watch it.
You have to watch it. But they have a segment in there tying the carpeting to the proof that Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landing. And what's funny is, I've watched this in mixed company a few times, and generally, through most of the movie, people are like, oh yeah, that's stupid, whatever, da 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 da. But then when it gets to that, there's this typical reaction of like, holy shit, there's something there.
That's awesome.
You should definitely watch Room 237.
What's the connection? The carpet was connected somehow to the lunar landing?
Yes. The carpet looks like the launch pads, and on and on and on. It's just like his it's supposed to be like Kubrick's like little sly confession.
Oh yeah, okay, can see that.
Yeah. I think they made an entirely separate movie about Kubrick faking the movie.
Well, we got to deal with our subjectivity, man. It's fucking everything up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you want to lean on your cold hard science, but even that can be subjectified, right? I mean, that's all through the filter of your own perception. You only got 5 senses, man. What if there's other stuff going on that you just aren't aware of yet, dude?
Absolutely, and that's absolutely true. Science is limited to nature, but where does my perception of that end? And also, things happen to me. Like, I have terrible fucking luck, and things keep happening to me where it's like the probability of this happening is so fucking extreme. But then I think how I'm not surprised by it at the same time, because it fits in all these other things that happen to me. And I'm like, is there a God?
Yeah. Is there a master plan? Like we're all on a track?
Exactly. Is there somebody crafting this bullshit? I think there probably is.
You know what? That brings to mind the idea that how powerful is consciousness in the mind, because there is some truth to the idea that if you can think of an idea, that it can be made real, like it can be manifested. You know, there's a lot of truth to that, because you look at everything humans have done, we've done some pretty crazy shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I know a lot of people who are really into that. It's like The Secret.
Oh, that I've never read that. I've heard about that, but I remember in the '70s there were a lot of books about ESP and mind control and telepathy and the power of the mind, and it's that same sort of mentality. So it's kind of self-helpy stuff, you know.
Right, but there are these people who are 20 somethings, 30 somethings, who are into that. They're like, I'm going to manifest this thing. Right? They're saying, well, I want to do this, so I'm going to manifest it, and then they just think about it and they try to get it to happen. And from the outside, it looks to me like they're just going in and out of jail. But but from their perspective, I don't know what it is, because just like you said, consciousness is such a powerful thing. It's really all we have. Our mind is really all we have. The entire world could be an absolute illusion, right? Sort of like the Matrix or whatever. Basically everything that we have, that we understand, is being funneled through that little organ up there on top of everything else.
I think it has to do with scale, because if a person has an idea, then it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is going to execute that idea. But the fact that that idea has been had and put out into the world, it might
Mm-hmm.
get picked up or also put out in the world by a bunch of other humans, and then
Mm-hmm.
eventually you might get something out of it. Like over the course of time, there might be a groundswell where enough people are like, yeah, let's put a man on the moon, or let's build a city, or let's invent microprocessors, or whatever they're going to do. And a lot of these things are incremental. And that brings me to this book I wanted to tell you about called Enlightenment Now. Have you heard
Yeah.
of a writer named
Oh,
Steven
Steve
Pinker?
Pinker. Oh yeah, I'm a big Steve Pinker fan. Or at least I was back
Yeah,
then. I guess he's like real sort of like icky now. I don't know. He's getting like this backlash on his newer stuff that I haven't seen. But back when I was in college and stuff, I really was interested in evolutionary biology, and he's like an evolutionary psychologist. So yeah, I'm really familiar with Steve Pinker up until about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
well, I think you probably are referring to his earlier era where I think he's got a little more pop. His writing's got a little more popular style. Like
Yeah.
this book Enlightenment Now. I think he wrote it, uh, an earlier version of it, and then he wrote this version, which is maybe revisiting a lot of the same stuff in a more palatable way, that more mainstream way. But the idea of the book is that, like Enlightenment thinking and the Age of Reason and all that, um, the ideas of it are so sound that there's been a very slow, incremental uh, progress to humanity, the state of humanity, like with legal rights and voting and infant mortality rates and agriculture and just violence overall, warfare, crime, all these different things. But it's so small that people don't perceive it. Like in general, you sort of see the news and you're like, oh my God, the world's ending.
Right.
There's war, there's famine, there's climate change, all this kind of stuff. Everything seems bad in the newspaper. But if you just look at the slow graph over the last 500 years or whatever, so many things have gotten better, slowly but steadily, because of just the accumulation of good, solid ideas, which kind of goes back to science and reason and a lot of these things that have been established over the centuries. And that ties into the idea that, like, one person may not be able to say, hey, I want to have $1 million, like in The Secret, and manifest $1 million. But if you have an idea, once you've had that idea, if it gets out in the world, maybe over the course of centuries, someday you might have androids, or you might have eye in the sky, or you might have, Social Security or whatever,
Right. Well, talking about the Pinker thing too, it kind of comes full circle, right? Where we were talking about, your brain and your consciousness is really kind of like, where you're at. It's like, it's like pretty much all of reality is whatever's going on in your brain.
Yeah.
You have these people who are upset about the state of the world. And Steve Pinker is saying, that's not the state of the world. You just see
Yeah.
it in these newspapers and everything. But at the same time, they're seeing it in these newspapers. And that is their world. They're like being terrorized by these ideas. And it is their world. That this terrible situation has been manifested by this media. And so it is actually the reality. In this strange way.
That's the narrative that they're living too. That's their film. It's like me saying I only read nonfiction books, so I'm creating this narrative of NPR in the morning and the news and all the president's going to be impeached or whatever and all this craziness, and then the nonfiction books, and so you get this. It's even more dramatic because it's quote unquote reality. It's like the real world, but it's kind of a constructed narrative. It's what I choose to look at. It's not the whole story necessarily. And it's a certain amount of optimism. It's a certain amount of cynicism. It's all bundled into my personal recipe of what I like. And the next guy has his own recipe of, like Sarah reads a lot of fiction. So her head's over in a different, a slightly different version of the world. You know what I mean?
And what puts you ahead of the curve there, way ahead of the curve, is that you're aware. You're aware that, you are sort of like crafting your own worldview.
I don't know if it puts me ahead.
It certainly does. It certainly does. Most people I know are very disorganized. They don't know where stuff comes from. They don't know what they're looking at. They don't know what they're seeing, and they're constantly torturing themselves because they don't realize that they are terrorizing themselves, with this sort of media that they don't even understand.
Which brings us to the value of happiness. Are you happy? Does it matter? We should be happy because you got to deal with every waking moment. You want to be happy, but it can't just be a generic placeholder. What is happiness? It's the right balance of being in yourself, being in your moment, and can't necessarily be blissful all the time because that's a burnout. Then it all becomes a plateau. But you can't be afraid all the time or anxious because that'll be a health hazard.
Absolutely.
See?
So let me ask you a question about that. The main character, what's his name?
Oh, Henry Dittman, Eric LaBuddy?
Yeah, LaBuddy, yeah. I can't believe I forgot because I love it when she's like, French? And he's like, I don't know. Yeah, I've run across some stuff like that. Anyway, so what do you think about him? Do you think that he's happy?
He was kind of that iteration of the character. What you see in that film is, have you seen the movie Being There by Hal Ashby?
Yes, I love Hal Ashby.
Do you think the character in Being There, the Peter Sellers character, do you think he's happy?
I think so. I think he is. Because nothing really bothers him.
Yeah, that's who he is. He's kind of like that guy.
Yeah. I mean, like, LaBuddy, has sort of like this stressful existence because he's got these cravings and he's always like having to plan out like this sort of like underhanded stuff.
We all have that though, don't we?
We definitely do. That's why I love this film. There's a lot going on. I think it's very legit. But I don't know. Maybe the stress is part of it for him. Do you think that's part of the game for him?
Yeah, it's what the yin yang thing is. It's like a balance between you can't appreciate the good times until you've pulled yourself out of the bad times. So they kind of live off of each other. It's kind of like an oscillator, like on a synthesizer. It's got an up and a down stroke, like a wave or a motor. Like it's like motion. Like we're always in motion, atoms, electrons, all that crap. So your life is just that up and down. So he's kind of in that swing between his fix every every 6 hours, I guess. No, it's every 12 hours. It's been a while since I've seen the film.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've seen it a few times, and I don't know. I know it's at least daily.
Yeah, he has it like there's always the clock strikes midnight. Yeah. But Yeah, that's how my friend was. He was like, he could be like, I didn't know that he was using shooting drugs in his arm, and he would be off and on. Like his personality would change in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he would disappear for a minute, and then he'd be like a different person, you know.
I know exactly what you're saying.
And he would always say, "Do you want some water? Can I get you some water?" And I think the reason he did it was a distraction. It was like look over here. Like instead of
Oh,
looking at my eyes or looking at me, can I do something for you? Let me go get you a glass of water. And it was just the weirdest thing. And it was uncanny. Like, what the fuck is with the water, dude? You know?
I definitely see that. Hey, have you ever done Dilaudid? Have you ever?
No, but I
I
have I have tried stuff, pretty strong stuff, but not Dilaudid. Have you?
I have a very high pain tolerance. I have a strange health condition where I experience a lot of physical injury. And a few years ago, I fell down and two bones came out of my left arm. And I get in the ambulance, and the lady in the back of the ambulance is like, "Here, let me give you something for the pain." And I'm like, "I'm cool. Just take me to the hospital."
That's
Uh,
awesome.
and they're like, you know, no, we'd really appreciate it because we got to drive across town, and that arm is really messed up, and you know, I can't believe you're not freaking out, and your adrenaline will wear off, and like you want. And I'm like, I'm totally fine. I'm actually totally chill. This hurts a lot. I'm great. Just take it, right? It's totally fine. And the driver came back and he's like, "Sir, please, you're not working tomorrow," which is weird because I just got married, and I had like a wedding reception thing for the next day, and then I had to go to work. And they're like, "You're not working tomorrow," and I'm like, "Bullshit, I am working tomorrow." And I'm like, "Sir, please, as the driver, it would just make me much more comfortable if you just let her give you some Dilaudid." And I look at this lady,
Did you
and
do it?
she looked really tortured. So I'm like, "Ah, fuck it, go ahead." I used to be a wild man. So she gives me this shot, right? So we're going like a block away. And about a block away, I'm standing up and dancing around going, "Woo!"
Nice.
And I got like these bones hanging out of my arm. And the lady's like, "Sir, sit down." And I'm like, "This is delighted. This shit's fucking great." I'm like, "I can't feel anything." It was amazing.
I think my dad had a lot of Dilaudid or morphine when he was in the hospital before he passed away. He had a sickness, and they gave him a lot of the heavy pain meds on a drip, you know.
Yeah.
And he said it was great.
And it really is. I couldn't believe how good it is. So, where do you plan on going to, man?
For film?
Yeah, or anything, man. Like, I mean, like, I find Boppin at the Glue Pack, and I watch it, and I'm like, "Well, this is fucking great." And I'm like, "Well, what's going on?" And I don't see any projects that you're doing on your own. I don't know where you're.
Oh man, it's it's weird, man. That's a good question. I think I've kind of moved on from filmmaking of that type.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, just because it's such a big undertaking, you know. Like I think it took me about 12 years to make that film,
Yeah,
and it was obsessive. Like there was a period of time for about 4 years where I made a vow to wear a tie to work every day, and I worked at Playboy, and I could wear like shorts and flip flops. It was really laid back.
yeah,
Nobody wore a tie, but I had all these ties. I really liked ties, and I had a tie collection, and I never wore them. I had no reason to wear them except weddings and stuff, job interviews, and I hadn't had any job interviews. I was at the same place for like 18 years. And so I just started wearing these ties every day. But that was my sort of uh, like a monk or something, you know, my acceptance of silence or whatever, to have this vow. I'm going to wear a tie every day until I finish this darn film. And it just
yeah,
became this huge, huge uphill task. And I probably made it into a bigger thing than it needed to be because I'm some sort of a perfectionist freak or something. And I don't want to go through that again because I probably burned through 2 or 3 girlfriends. and estranged a lot of friends. Like I'm not really in touch with very many people from making the film. Um, yeah, it was an ordeal, I guess. It took a lot out of me. And then I had a kid,
Yeah.
and
You had
the
a
woman.
family, so that makes it harder, definitely, especially with how chaotic it is to make a film.
Yeah, and I had a kid with somebody who ended up being mentally ill,
Oh,
and that was a big. That's something that I still have to kind of deal with. And I didn't realize at the time that she was starting to have her breakdown or whatever, and so that was another huge mess in my life because then we had a really tumultuous custody battle.
yeah.
And so that's all sorted out. And now I'm sort of getting back to what feels like a kind of a normalcy um, the last few years. But I think my wife pointed it out to me that she thinks I might have had some kind of PTSD or something from that whole
Mm-hmm.
experience,
Mm-hmm.
um, because it was so traumatic dealing with. I didn't know anything about mental illness. You know, it was just weird, um, and so that just absorbed every second of my life. You know, and it made it very hard to be creative or to have trust and relationships, and a lot of those types of things have been, you know, brought into a new light. You know.
I totally understand that. I actually can relate to that very deeply. Maybe you're just still like kind of processing it a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And also,
And
looking back on the film and everything, it was a tricky film because it's about one of my best friends,
oh
and
yeah,
we're estranged now. But there's an interesting, like I've exploited a lot of intense personal experiences to make my films. I've made short films before, videos and stuff, and the another film I'd actually made three films. I had a brother who committed suicide, and I've made three films about that, short films, different, one experimental, one sort of a documentary-ish interview type thing, and another one was kind of a narrative film, short film. And again, that puts my family and me, like I just dove into it because I was younger and I didn't really think much about it. But now looking back on it, I'm like, man, that must have been really complex for my mom and dad and my brothers and sisters, and none of us have ever really talked about it directly. But I feel kind of awkward now, like wow, I've really gone into this heavy stuff without thinking about how it might affect other people. um, so there's a selfishness there, so I'm kind of coming to terms with a lot of that stuff. And since these films were inspired by these personal experiences, um, that's kind of what gave me the momentum. Like I had a strong emotional reaction to it, and I kind of wanted to do something a little more genre-ish, like a horror film or a crime thriller, but they don't have the momentum because what's the personal part of it, you know?
right,
So it's a
right.
tricky situation, um, and I think music has always been my first love, so I'm kind of playing around with music again, and
I'm kind of bummed out. You don't have anything that you're just like absolutely itching to make right.
well, I had a script called "The Girl with the Wandering Eye,"
Yeah.
and again, to tell you, this is the irony. Um, so what's the word? Not scientifically, but medically, a wandering eye is strabismus, um, where you know cross-eyed or one eye wanders out to the outside or whatever. So ironically, me and my co-writer had written the script, and it was kind of inspired by a song that I did in a band, also called "The Girl with the Wandering Eye." The song was, and it was kind of like a comedy, but a horror film. And again, me trying to get to Eraserhead. I really wanted to do Eraserhead my whole life. Um, had that vibe to it. But then my daughter had a wandering eye. She had a strabismus, and she had to have two surgeries to have it corrected. And it kind of took something out of that script. You know what I mean? I felt like I don't feel right making this film. You know.
Oh wow.
And then my other daughter also has strabismus. So I have two daughters that have these eye issues. And now when I think about that script, I'm just like, fuck this. This is stupid, you know?
In a strange way, right?
Yeah. So the thing about film is it's very fixed. It's like, and I'm very critical. Like it's hard for me to. I go through moments. Like right now, I'm watching this series called Our Boys. Have you heard of this?
Our Boys?
Our Boys. It's an Amazon series.
Oh,
It's pretty engaging, actually. It's a complicated series. It reminds me a little bit of The Wire and
oh.
The Killing, if you kind of mix those two together. But
Who's it called?
it's set in Israel, and that's engaging. And I'm watching Succession, and that's fun. But I have a hard time I'm not as enamored as I used to be of cinema. Like it's not as much of an obsession, and so there's something that's fixed about it. You know what I mean? Like you spend all this time, like possibly years,
Yeah.
and you make this thing, and it's fixed, and then in a sense it's dead. You let it go, and its life after that is in social media and interacting with people and seeing how they react on festivals. But the thing they're reacting to, the new life, is in that interaction. The thing itself is fixed, like a book or a movie
Yeah.
or whatever. And so I'm looking for something that's more immediate and feedbacky and dynamic and evolving and in some ways maybe automated. Um, so I'm kind of like fascinated with modular synthesizers and the generative composition style. Like Brian Eno is doing a lot of stuff with ambient music, where he'd create a situation where music could evolve and happen sort of on its own, but it was based upon these starting parameters. And
Mhm.
so I'm looking for something in there. And if there was a way to make a film that satisfied that curiosity, I would be doing it. So I'm still looking for that, but it's probably going to be more in music or some other art form, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe an installation, some kind of installation piece. Um, the whole idea of a narrative fictional film, though, right now, it's hard to wrap my head around
Yeah.
that because
Well,
of
I
the
mean,
marketing and money constraints and all that
you can
stuff. You know?
explore the whole thing, as a documentary film.
Yeah, that's true. And there's something to that because then you're discovering and exploring in a documentary. You're going out into the world, asking questions. So I think I'm kind of into the process and not so enamored of the finishing of the result. Like I just want to kind of keep moving and keep dipping into stuff. And a film like Boppin is kind of all about moving towards this one thing. And as I was telling you earlier, I spent 4 years editing, which is
Right.
process, and it was detrimental to the finishing. And everybody else involved was like, "Fucking dude, you got to finish it."
Yeah.
So my needs for process were kind of fighting the idea of like, no, you finish it and we put it out in the world and see what happens, you know? So yeah, it's complicated stuff.
It is complicated, but making a documentary would be a lot less problematic than making something like Boppin. Because,
You know,
you
and
don't have to do too much stuff.
I shoot so much footage. Like I'm always filming. I'm
Oh, really?
constantly. I take pictures. I film. I do some. But the idea of sitting down to edit, then again, my mind is like, oh shit, I can do so many things with this. What do I want to do? I don't know what I want to do yet. So that's
I understand.
I have to find the play. If it's fun to play with it, then something will come out of it. But there's a movie called. Oh, I can't remember the name of it, but a movie comes to mind that did have that feeling of something that was evolutionary and came together, the editing and the process towards the finish. But also, again, I know that, and like Eraserhead, that was a 5 year movie, right? He spent his whole life making that film. Like that was
Oh,
a major epic process for him. So again, it gets back to happiness. Like what makes you happy right now? What's in the moment, you know?
well, our own happiness is really
It
important,
is.
especially if it's honest. Not
Yeah.
just like
You know what makes me happy though is that you liked Boppin' at the Glue Factory. That makes me happy.
I love your film. I really do. I really like it, and anybody I've shown it to really liked it too.
That's so good to
Absolutely.
hear.
So, man, I've taken up like 2 hours of your time, and I appreciate so much that you've done this, Jeff Orgill. I am you're one of the first people that I wanted to interview on So you've been so nice to give me 2 hours. I very much appreciate that. I hope everything works out for you. And I hope everybody watches Boppin at the Glue Factory now and buys multiple. Is it available on disc?
Um, I have a bunch of DVDs. It has another name though, Junkie Nurse.
Junkie Nurse, yeah, I saw that when I was trying to track you down. That at some point.
Say that again?
When I was trying to track you down, I saw that it was called Junkie Nurse at some point.
Yeah, it was always Boppin at the Glue Factory. I think I changed it to that when we had our first play date in France. That it would translate easier, but
yeah. Oh
stupid.
yeah, I could I could see that. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, and your film is actually rated, pretty good. I think it's got like a 7.5 on Amazon, like out of 10.
Possibly, yeah.
Which is really solid. I mean, I don't think that film's going to run into like any of the problems that Cody's movies run into, where if he gets a certain number of one-star reviews, he's banned from the surface. But yeah, I know it's over 7. It might be like 7.5, which is good. That's very good. That's very respectable. It's a movie to watch, huh?
Can you get banned from the server?
Yeah. Did you hear that? In the Cody Clark interview, he talks about that. And he's had a couple of movies that are like banned from Amazon because they reached a certain number of one-star.
His movie got banned from Amazon for one-star reviews. That's fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's like a certain number too, and it's because it's a smaller film. And like Ramekin and Mute Date are still on, but he's kind of worried about Mute Date hitting this number and then getting thrown off the server. Ramekin, I think, is going to be okay. Definitely, because it seems like a lot of people really appreciate Ramekin more than they do Mute Date. Though Mute Date's a lot of fun. But yeah, if you get a certain amount of one-star reviews, you're thrown off the services like a smaller film. But I don't think you're going to run into that problem because you're rated really high. I don't think too high. I think you're rated legitimately.
Yeah, there used to be a time where I need to go back on Amazon and make sure I don't think there's any new reviews. Usually it tells you if there's a new review or something. So I think we're hanging in there.
We have a 7.2. Boppin at the Glue Factory has a 7.2 out of 10 on Amazon, which is great for being such a small film. And people watch the film and they absolutely appreciate it. More people need to watch it because it's really good.
Well, I hope people hear you saying all this and go watch it. That'd be awesome. I'd love to get more feedback and see what people glean from the film. It is a layered film, like you said.
Yeah, there's a lot. You
can pour yourself into it. Yeah. There's I wanted to mention the distributor too for Boppin, Indie Rights Films, and at the time when I finished the film, that was a big question because the landscape of distribution was changing radically. Like there didn't used to be internet aggregators, and Indie Rights is sort of like an internet aggregator. They don't pick up your film and request all these deliverables and then represent it and go out and sell it like the old distributors would do. They basically put it up on Amazon and all the internet aggregators, and you get they take a percentage of all your sales or your rentals, and they don't do any marketing. It's all on you. So it's a whole different paradigm from what it used to be back in like the heyday of indie film, like the 80s and 90s. So I kind of grew up and went to film school with a whole different mentality, and then as Boppin was getting finished, the whole landscape was changing. So it was like a reinvention of like, what am I supposed to be doing? Should I go this way or should I go that way? I remember spending a lot of time thinking about that and researching it, and it never really settled. But now it feels very settled, and I think Indie Rights, the distributor, is awesome. They're very transparent, and they have some really, really successful films on there. Like some people are actually probably able to make a decent living. I would say maybe a few people out of many hundreds, but it does give you hope that as an indie filmmaker in this current landscape, if you play your cards right and really commit to that path, you probably could cut out a little path.
Yeah, And so they placed you on Prime, and I know that Cody's doing it directly because he was telling me how crazy the procedure is. If they handled that for you, that's not bad.
He should send his films to indie rights. Maybe they would say, yeah, let's do this, because they've been they do all of that hassle part. They do that for you. And actually, I've been dropping the ball because I should go I have a French subtitled version of the film.
Oh, yeah?
And if I had that, because like when we played in France, I had to get it subtitled for those screenings. There were like 3 or 4 festivals over there. And I could get it up with subtitles. I could get it up with the surround sound. I could get it onto iTunes. There's a lot more stuff I could do with it, but it just takes a lot of time and energy. And, there's just many other things that are more interesting to do, like play with synthesizers, and read books.
Totally. Just getting my podcast and all these different podcasts are a pain in the ass. Everything's such a mess, man. And I'm like, I just want to be an artist. I just want, people to be able to get my stuff. But man, I'm just doing like this other stuff. It was kind of educational sometimes when you go down those roads. Sort of.
Yeah, and it's all tied together. It's a presentation, Well, hearing that Cody interview actually and seeing his films inspired me. So I have to thank you for that. And it did get me thinking about, time to get back to work.
If you haven't seen all of Ramekin, you got to get back to it.
I'm gonna.
I love that movie, and it was like 2 locations, and he has this wonderful actors, and I think a lot of people love that movie too. I love Mute Date too. I love where he went with it. I mean, I think that's very well written. That's the thing with Boppin and Ramekin and Mute Date is that they're all very well written. These ideas are very solid, and I was kind of nervous when, even though I wasn't like a fan of his yet, when they're in that part in Mute Date where he tells the joke on the stage.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to it. I'm like, that is the perfect fucking joke. So, yeah, man. Hey, thanks a lot for doing this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show.
I'm such a big fan of the movie. I really hope, at some point you make something else. I hope in either way that you're happy. I hope that everything works out for you. I think Boppin's so great, and more people need to look at it. Boppin at the Glue Factory on Amazon Prime, and I think that's the only place to have it.
Yep.
Okay. All right, man. Anything else you want to say before I let you go?
It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thanks for having me on your show. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. I'll catch up with you later.
Thanks, special character.
Well, there it is. One heck of an interview, if you ask me. Thank you so much again, Jeff Orgill, for being the second Nonsense Password interview. I very much love your film. Please check out Jeff's film, Boppin' at the Glue Factory. It is on Amazon Prime. Rate it. Talk to him. I hope he makes another movie. That's such a great movie. Some interesting topics. Some things to think about. That's what you get here on Nonsense Password. Great stuff. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can do so on Twitter at NonsensePassPod. The official website that has links to all the projects, nonsensepassword.com. If you want to email me, special character at nonsensepassword.com. There is a Redbubble store, there's a Teespring store, there's a SoundCloud, there's a Facebook. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but it doesn't really matter. Please stay tuned to Nonsense Password for future wave plays and interviews and other special releases. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, please share it, please rate the show in the iTunes store or wherever you can rate it. I like feedback too. Give Jeff some feedback. Give me some feedback. Anyway, I hope everything's going well for you out there. And thanks for listening to the show. Again, it's Boppin' at the Glue Factory. Boppin at the Glue Factory. Jeff Orgill, Orgill. For this, the second interview for Nonsense Password. Signing off. I'm special character.